Did you throw it away? My husband demanded angrily, his face red with frustration. The $1,500 watch my father gave me for our daughter's birthday? Yes, I answered calmly. I threw it in the trash, and I would do it again. His eyes narrowed, and his irritation flared up. Are you out of your mind? Have you lost it completely? Maybe, I shrugged, but the issue isn't with me. Look closely, right here. I pointed to a spot on the watch in his hand. David hesitated but finally took a closer look. His expression changed from fury to confusion, and as the truth sank in, his face went pale. My name is Nickol, and I'm 29 years old. David and I married a year ago, and sadly, we ended up living with his parents. My father-in-law never missed a chance to belittle me. You can't even make a proper cup of tea, he'd say. Each day felt like a nightmare. I often wished I could wake up from this cruel reality. David and I had known each other in high school, but we reconnected at a reunion. He confessed he had always loved me, and we started dating before getting married a year ago. I was thrilled. I loved David and was looking forward to our life together. I believed that as long as he was with me, everything would be fine and I'd be welcomed into a wonderful family. I was so naive. After the wedding, I moved in with David and his parents, but it didn't take long to see that my father-in-law was a very difficult man, old-fashioned, misogynistic, and unwilling to do anything for himself. According to David, my father-in-law once told his wife, a woman should never defy a man. He even threw a plate at her once for disobeying him. I couldn't believe it, but David confirmed it was true. It got worse. I soon noticed how racist he was. As an immigrant, he made it clear he didn't like me. I worked as an interpreter, fluent in both English and Japanese, and no matter how hard I tried, he constantly insulted my work. One time, he muttered, "I can't stand foreigners." It made my blood boil. He assumed I wasn't good at cooking or tea ceremonies simply because I came from another country, but I loved Japanese culture and had spent years living in Japan, learning their customs and etiquette. One day, I finally spoke up. Even though I'm from another country, I live here, and I love Japan. Your attitude is embarrassing. Embarrassing? Who should be embarrassed? He shot back. I thought he should feel ashamed for speaking to me like that just because of where I was from, but even though his words hurt, I kept quiet. He was David's father, and I felt I had to endure it. At first, I hoped that over time, he'd warm up to me, but he couldn't even look at me without sneering. He didn't try to get to know me, and his words were cruel. I'm going to teach you the proper Japanese way, he said, handing me housework, cleaning, laundry, even massaging his shoulders. It hurt me to think that he'd manipulated us into living there just to make my life miserable. Although my mother-in-law apologized for his behavior, she was too afraid to stand up to him. I pitied her but resented him for treating people like this. I often thought about telling David the truth, but he was always busy with work and traveling. I didn't want to burden him. One day, my father-in-law called from the kitchen. "Hey, it's lunchtime, hurry up." I worked from home, so I was around most of the day, but my job didn't have flexible hours, and I couldn't just stop whenever I wanted. I wanted to eat lunch on my own time, but he had other plans. "Move it," he shouted. He didn't care that I wasn't finished working. I tried to explain, "I need to finish my work first, so I'd like to have lunch when I'm done." He scoffed, "This English-speaking job isn't good for you. You should know better than to ignore your in-laws' wishes. This is common sense. Immigrants are so annoying, they don't get it," he said coldly. His words were a constant source of torment, making it impossible to focus on my job. He set unreasonable expectations, ordering me to clean every morning, forcing me to stay at the table until everyone else finished eating, and even barging into my room while I was working. Once, he yelled from outside my door, "I don't want to hear any English." That was the breaking point. If I didn't do something, I'd lose my job. That evening, I finally told David everything. I cried as I spoke, and he looked horrified. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice shaky. "I had no idea. I promised I would make you happy, Nickol." David confronted his parents about how they had treated me. They were furious, but he stood firm. Then he made a proposal. "Nickol, let's move out. We don't have to stay with my parents. Let's get an apartment and live on our own." "Are you sure?" I asked, uncertain. "Absolutely. I think it's the best thing for us moving forward," David assured me. I was overwhelmed with relief. It felt like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders. We moved out and never saw my in-laws again. David stood up to his father, and from then on, my father-in-law left me alone. Life returned to normal. and I found happiness in my newfound freedom and my work. A year later, I found out I was pregnant. David was overjoyed. "Mom and Dad are happy too," he said one day. "That's nice," I replied, forcing a smile. Even though they were happy, I couldn't shake the sadness. David noticed. "You don't have to see them if you don't want to," he said gently. "The most important thing is you and the baby." Months later, our beautiful daughter was born. As she held my finger in her tiny hand, all the pain seemed to fade away. One evening, David hesitated before asking, "Can I let my parents meet her? They were so happy when they heard she was born." I looked at him and nodded. "It's okay, I understand how you feel. Even though your father hurt me, I know he loves you, and I can see how much they mean to you." It had been a year since that terrible time. Maybe my father-in-law had changed. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to see him again. When I finally made my decision, David smiled brightly. "Yes, that was a year ago, and people can change. Let's stay optimistic," I told myself. The day I was discharged from the hospital, David, our daughter, and I made our way to his parents' house. It had been a year since I last saw my father-in-law, and I couldn't help but feel a bit nervous. Upon our arrival, my in-laws greeted us warmly. My father-in-law, surprisingly, appeared happy as he gazed at his granddaughter. Seeing him like this gave me a sense of relief, and I felt glad that I had agreed to bring her along. David seemed pleased as well, and for once, there were no sarcastic remarks from his father. I silently thanked the heavens, hoping that maybe, just maybe, my father-in-law regretted his past actions. Then, to my surprise, he presented me with a gift-wrapped box. "This is for your daughter's birth," he said. "It's a $1,500 watch. Please display it proudly." I was shocked, not just because he had bought us a gift, but because of its staggering price. A watch costing $1,500? Even my mother-in-law looked astonished. "Don't be so surprised," my father-in-law remarked. "Consider it my way of showing gratitude for allowing me to meet my grandchild." Despite my initial hesitation, I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps we were finally starting to understand each other. My heart warmed at the thought of his approval. Once we returned home, David and I eagerly unwrapped the gift. "Huh?" we both murmured in confusion. The watch, though elegant, looked quite ordinary for something so expensive. We had expected something much flashier. We pondered its price but dismissed any concerns, deciding to place it on a shelf in the living room. Then the phone rang. It was my father-in-law. Ever since we received the watch, he had been calling frequently. At first, he simply wanted updates about his granddaughter, but soon his tone shifted. His words turned demeaning and accusatory, much like before. Even when I tried ignoring his calls, he persisted. Eventually, he started making unsettling observations about my daily routine. "Do immigrants only clean once a week?" he scoffed. "I noticed you've only cooked Japanese food twice this week. This is why foreigners are a problem." His comments were eerily accurate. How did he know? I turned to David, worried. "I have no clue," he said, looking equally puzzled. Fear crept in. My father-in-law's knowledge of our household details became increasingly precise, almost as if he were watching us. Exhausted from caring for our baby, managing work, and dealing with him, I reached my breaking point. I sobbed, overwhelmed with stress. I had moved out to escape him, yet here he was, still tormenting me. I felt like I was losing my mind. A chilling realization struck me. Goosebumps ran down my spine as I pieced everything together. My heart pounded as I glanced at my sleeping daughter. I had to protect her. Trembling, I made up my mind. That evening, David returned from work, holding the watch. His expression was a mix of confusion and frustration. "You threw it away?" he asked incredulously. "The $1,500 watch my father gave us for our daughter's birth?" "Yes," I admitted without hesitation. "I threw it in the trash, and I'd do it again." David's frustration flared. "Are you out of your mind? That's insane." "Maybe," I shrugged, "but the real problem isn't me. Let me show you." I pointed at a small black dot on the watch's surface. "Look closely." Skeptical but curious, David inspected it slowly. His expression morphed from anger to shock. "What is this? Some kind of reset button?" he asked. "No," I said grimly, "it's not a button. Look closer." David's eyes widened in horror. "A camera?" he whispered. "Yes," I confirmed. The watch contained a hidden camera. It had been watching us the entire time. That explained how my father-in-law knew every detail of our daily lives, even down to our meals. Disgusted, I revealed what I had done. I had a professional inspect it. They confirmed it was bugged. Your father did this. David stood frozen, struggling to process my words. Then his expression hardened. Nickol. I'm so sorry, he said. I can't believe I put you through this again. I'll never forgive him. The next day, we left our daughter with my parents and went to confront my in-laws. The moment we arrived, David placed the watch before his father. Do you know why we're here? You do, don't you? His eyes blazed with fury. My father-in-law looked slightly uneasy but feigned innocence. What are you talking about? He asked. David's patience snapped. You gave us a watch embedded with a hidden camera and microphone. Still, my father-in-law denied everything. Where's your proof? David and I exchanged glances. My mother-in-law, silent until now, finally spoke up. You're the one who's going to pay, she said coldly, because I'm divorcing you. My father-in-law scoffed. What nonsense are you talking about? David cut in. I already showed Mom everything. We found your receipts and order forms. You custom ordered that watch, with surveillance equipment built in. There's no denying it. Realizing he had no way out, my father-in-law admitted the truth. I just wanted to keep an eye on Nickol, he muttered. I wanted to see if she was really fit to be part of this family. The room filled with silent rage following this revelation. My mother-in-law proceeded with the divorce. My father-in-law was forced to pay alimony, and since the house belonged to her family, he was kicked out. Now, he lives alone in a tiny apartment. She later confided that she had endured his mistreatment for David's sake. However, after witnessing my suffering, she found the courage to leave. Now, she lives freely and happily. David severed all ties with his father, and our family grew even closer. He changed jobs to spend more time with us, and since then, our communication has strengthened. I've never been happier. Happiness comes in different forms for everyone, but I've learned that sacrificing oneself for someone else's approval is never the answer. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Stay tuned.